definitely say that everybody here is familiar to varying degrees with the California Healthy Workplace, Healthy Families Act of 2014, or as it's otherwise known, California's paid sick leave law. And you're probably also aware that recently, as of the first of this year, SB 616 went into effect, which is the amended and expanded version of the paid sick leave law. I was originally going to begin my discussion with a summary of all the requirements of the paid sick leave law that haven't changed and sort of recap those, refresh your memory. But we've just, as a department, myself and so many others, received questions about what the changes are, and especially the new FAQs that were rolled out end of last year, that I think my time is probably better spent going over the changes. So I'll just quickly run through what's staying the same. Okay, so what's staying the same? First one, the criteria that an employee must meet in order to become eligible to receive paid sick leave, when the leave first becomes available for an employee to actually use, the fact that there are two different ways that an employer can provide paid sick leave, the accrual method or the upfront lump sum method, permissible uses, the reasons that an employee can use their paid sick leave, those haven't changed. The rules regarding whether an employee is required to provide notice in order to take their leave, as well as the rules regarding compensation, how an employer must compensate the employee for that paid sick time, as well as the fact that employers do not have to pay out paid sick leave upon separation. If you have any specific questions about those, by the way, feel free to email me, see me at break, what have you. All right, so what you're more interested in hearing about probably, what is changing? As we'll see, the first bullet point has an asterisk by it, and that's important because if you're an employer using the accrual method to provide your paid sick leave, you can continue to do so using the 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked accrual rate. That's the standard. That's what we know. That's what we love. Stick with it. It's easy. It's fine. You don't have to change it. If, however, you want to use an alternative accrual method, and only then must the employer provide at least 24 hours of paid sick leave by the 120th calendar day year of employment, and 40 hours by the 200th day of employment. So what I want to be clear about, because I don't think that the statute or the revisions to the law and the FAQs, I don't think they were totally clear on the fact that you either are doing the 1 for 30 standard accrual method or you're doing the alternative accrual method, 24 hours by 120, 40 hours by 200. You don't have to do both. I see a hand.
So if you don't change it, so 2023 was 1 hour per 30.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of part-time employees. And if you don't change it, you can still continue to use that even if they aren't going to get to the 24 hours by?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's a great question that I've heard probably 2 times because it's confusing. So thank you for asking that. So yes, I've got all caps stars. You do not need to satisfy both. So you do not need to satisfy both. All right, the next thing that is changing, accrual. I've got accrual cap here. Yes, this affects all employers that use an accrual method, regardless if they're using the standard 1 for 30 or the alternative. Previously, employees were permitted to accrue up to 48 hours or 6 days of paid sick leave, but now with the amendments, that's increased to 80 hours or 10 days. Similarly, employees with accrual-based policies have to allow employees to now carry over from 1 year to the next. It used to be employees could carry over 6 days or 48 hours. Now that carryover cap has increased to 10 days, 80 hours. Annual use cap. The amendments have also changed the paid sick leave law's annual use cap. Previously, under both the accrual method and the lump sum method, employers could limit the amount of paid sick leave that an employee could take per year to 24 hours or 3 years. This is now increased, again, under both methods to 40 hours or 5 days. That's pretty straightforward. And then relatedly, if an employer provides paid sick leave using the upfront lump sum method, instead of providing those 24 hours or 3 days upfront, they have to provide those 40 hours or 5 days. A nuance here that I want to flag, I did say that the amendments haven't changed the timing of when employees can start to use their paid sick leave. And that is a true statement, except for if you're using the lump sum method and you have new hires. For the new hires only, not only do 24 hours or 3 days of paid sick leave have to be available for the new hires to use by their 120th calendar day of employment. That was always the case. Now, 40 hours, 5 days have to be available for use by their 200th day. So it's just an add-on. A question that we also get with quite some frequency is what happens when an employer is subject to not only California paid sick law, but also as a state paid sick leave. Sorry, I'm getting my words twisted. So if you're subject to not only the California paid sick leave law, but also local ordinance, like a Los Angeles City ordinance or a West Hollywood ordinance or what have you. For example, many of you, I'm sure, know that Los Angeles City, you have to allow your employees to use up to 48 hours annually. While we know now in California, that's 40. So do you comply with the 40-hour use cap or the 48? Well, in almost all circumstances, you're going to provide a more generous policy to employees. So you give them the 48 hours of use time as opposed to the 40. So the greater the benefit to the employee, most of the time, that's what you're going to have to follow. However, there are a few exceptions to this general rule. Per the amendments, it's now the case that the local ordinances cannot contradict the state paid sick leave law. And so if there is a conflict, the state law preempts or controls. What are those instances where state law is always going to control? The lending of paid sick leave, pay stub statements, the calculation of paid sick leave, providing notice if the leave is foreseeable, the timing of the payment of the paid sick leave, and whether payment of sick leave is required upon termination. It's funny, Jeremy and I were actually talking about this the other day, and it seems really strange because let's pretend, and this isn't the case, but in a hypothetical situation, let's say LA City's ordinance were to say, whenever an employee is terminated, the employer must pay out all unused accrued paid sick leave upon termination. You're telling me, Thea, that I don't have to follow that, even though it's more generous? And yes, and we were going through, Jeremy and I, why that seems so non-California. And the reason for that, most likely, is that the state legislature has decided that these 6 topics are so important that if LA City did make a rule like that, I mean, how many employers would want to have employees in LA City? They'd all move out because they'd have to pay out paid sick leave. So these are things that are so important or, important really, that California said, look, you listen to us, cities. This is what you're following us. So just keep a mental note of that. I haven't seen local ordinances that contradict in these. If I miss something, if something changes, these are follow the state. Okay, and then finally, to close out the paid sick leave discussion, I just want to briefly touch on the changes that the amendments made with respect to many employees who are covered by valid collective bargaining agreements. Setting aside certain unionized employees in the construction industry who are completely exempt from the paid sick leave law, now, as a result of the amendments, union employees must be allowed to take paid sick leave for the same reasons as non-union employees who have paid sick leave. And the union employees cannot be required to find a replacement as a condition of taking paid sick leave. And lastly, they're protected from anti-retaliation provisions contained in the paid sick leave law.